Arsenal's season hangs in the balance with a massive 5 days of games coming up, starting with Arsenal versus Bournemouth at the Emirates Stadium on Saturday afternoon. I'm going to preview all of that here at Arsenal Unfiltered. Let's get started. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Arsenal Unfiltered, your 3 times a week dose of Arsenal coverage with me, your host Mark. Wherever you are, I hope you are very, very well and you have recovered from our disappointment earlier in the week against PSG. Of course, all is not lost there. I think we're still firmly in that tie and we've got a big chance of overturning it in Paris. We are going to have to replicate the Arsenal women's team and go away to a French opponent in the Champions League semi-final and try and turn over a 1-goal deficit, which, I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that. I think it's doable. I know it's doable. I absolutely know it's doable. It's just about, can we get that over the line? I don't know. We'll have to see when it comes around on Wednesday. But before that, like I mentioned at the start, we have a massive, massive game against Bournemouth. People will not be thinking of this as a massive game, but I've been looking and I am a little bit worried, and I do believe Arsenal's season is sort of hanging in the balance. Before I go on to the bulk of the podcast, I just want to say hello to all of our listeners from the United States. We've had a lot of listeners from the United States in the last month, in the month of April. So welcome to you, especially if you're in the states of California, Minnesota, North Carolina, Indiana. I think we're kind of covering all 4 corners of America with that. My American geography is not great, but I believe California's west coast, Minnesota up at the north. Yeah, so we are covering a fair bit of the United States, and I always think it's nice to celebrate those fans who are not from the UK. I'm not far from, or I wasn't when I grew up, was far from Arsenal, so I know why I support them. I always find it magic when people are from, California, for example, and you are miles away from the club and you still fall in love. Arsenal America is an incredible organisation out there who get tickets for the guys in the United States. So look them up if you want to travel over to the Arsenal and watch Arsenal play. And on that, Arsenal versus Bournemouth have a huge amount of tickets on the ticket exchange for tomorrow night. So if you are more local to the UK, or you can get the world's quickest flight, consider it. Weirdly, and I think it's a bit of a red flag, to be honest, for the first time that I can remember, I'm just going to pull it up, the Arsenal official Instagram has promoted the ticket exchange on, buy your ticket for Bournemouth at home, available on Ticket Exchange now, on the official Instagram page. I don't remember the last time, if ever, we needed to do that. And I think that shows a little bit about how people are feeling about Premier League games right now, and maybe a little bit of why I've got this nervousness about this game, because similar to the game in between the Real Madrid ties, it feels like it's just one that's in the way of what we really want to be talking about. The Premier League title is Liverpool's. That is completely wrapped up. We don't really have anything to play for, I think, is the way that a lot of people are looking at this. But I'm sorry, I think we really, really do. Finishing second, some people will think that's not important. I personally do think it's important. One, for the money that you get. You get a bit more money. You get a bit more kind of, prizes. But 2, just for the, I want to be able to say, in a season where we have been beaten up by injuries and we've had competing priorities and lots of things have not gone our way, we were still the second best team. And I think there's something important about that. It might not be important to the players, but I think it is important to the general feeling around the club. If we got to a Champions League semi-final, and that was as far as we got, and we finished second, I think you could kind of roughly figure out a way to describe a little bit of progress, or at least a standing still for the year. I think if we finish kind of 3rd or 4th, I don't think we're in any danger really of finishing 5th, as I'll take you through in a minute. If we finish 3rd or 4th, that's going to leave a really sour taste in our mouths. And, Mikel Arteta has done so much work over the past 5-6 years to build the culture of the club, build that relationship with the fans. And actually, I think if this season just goes out in a whimper, some of that kind of good feeling might get a little bit lost. And I think we need to make sure we continue to prioritise games like this one against Bournemouth. The reason I'm worried is because we have 5 points between ourselves and Newcastle, and we have to play Newcastle at some point as well. I think it's our penultimate game. So we really, really need to either maintain that 5-point advantage going to that, which, by the way, we've got a game against Liverpool at Anfield as well. So it's going to be very difficult to maintain that gap. Or we need to beat Newcastle, which historically we've found quite difficult. So why do I think this Bournemouth game is massive? If we don't get maximum points from the Bournemouth game, Newcastle are right there ready for us, and they will be looking at second place with, they'll be rubbing their hands together. They will be thinking, okay, well, they've got to go to Liverpool. A Liverpool team that, by the way, I don't think are going to be looking to sack this in at any point, right? They're going to want to finish as strong as they can. They'll be in front of their fans. Their fans will really want to beat us to rubber stamp their authority and superiority over us this year. And I think it's a real risk. If we just let this game slide by us and we don't take maximum points, we could be in real trouble. And Mikel Arteta has some huge decisions to make. Looking ahead to those Liverpool and Newcastle games, knowing that we're probably not going to take 6 points from them, I think if we got 4, that would be an incredible return. Even maybe if we got 2, that's going to sound strange, but if we got 2 and prevented both of those teams from winning, I guess it doesn't really matter about Liverpool. But if we prevent Newcastle from winning, I think we've got a very, very good chance of getting second with Southampton on the final day. So, we just really can't afford to lose those games. But if we lose the Bournemouth game, it's a real risky scenario and we're right on a knife edge. I'm just going to take us through. So you've heard our fixtures there. Newcastle have also got to play Brighton, Chelsea, Arsenal and Everton. I think that Chelsea game is massive. We really need Chelsea to do us a favour there. City have got Wolves, Southampton, Bournemouth, Fulham. You'd expect them to take maximum points from that. So again, this is another one. If they get 12 points, they're only 6 behind us. That means we need to get at least 7 from our final games. Now, so you'd probably be looking at that to make that 7 as 3 points against Bournemouth, 3 points against Southampton, and 1 against Liverpool or Newcastle to make that 7. So again, it adds to the credence that this is a really important game. Chelsea, I have written their fixtures down. They are 7 points behind us, and they have a brutal run in. They play Liverpool first, then of course that big game against Newcastle, Manchester United, who are buoyed by their victory last night, and Nottingham Forest, who will really, really need some points to make sure they stay in the European places. I think their season is coming to a bit of a whimper, and they need to just get some points on the board. So they will be fighting for their lives, I think. All that to say, I think this is a bigger game than we are anticipating, and there is a chance that 8th place this year gets you kind of some European football. So Bournemouth has still got something really big to play for as well. Really big to play for. So all of that to say, this is a big game. How should we line up for it? Well, it's a massive decision facing Mikel Arteta. Our recent record against Bournemouth is pretty good, right? It's pretty good. Apart from the game earlier this season, October, where obviously William Saliba got sent off, you have to go back to 2018 to when Bournemouth last got a Premier League win over us. So, we've had the upper hand in this. Of course, the famous Reece Nelson goal came against Bournemouth, and that match probably took years off my life, thinking back to it and how I remember experiencing that game. And, we've had some big success. We won 4-0 there in 2023, beat them 3-0 at the Emirates in 2024. So really it is that last result that's a bit of a blemish. In that game, I thought Bournemouth was superb. Obviously, we had William Saliba sent off, and that had a massive impact on the fixture as a whole. But I don't think you can look back at that game and say we were on top before William Saliba got sent off. Bournemouth are a really well-coached side, and I think Andoni Iraola will go to a big club very soon. I mean, if Mikel Arteta decided to go somewhere else, I wouldn't throw out the idea of Iraola at Arsenal. I'm just saying that. It's a very similar kind of philosophy. It's a certain way of coaching, and he's a very, very intelligent coach when it comes to all the aspects that we like about our team: organisation, pressing, managing transitions. We do all of that so well. Bournemouth do that well as well. They just don't have the budget that we've got. So Iraola would be someone I would consider as a potential future Arsenal manager should Mikel Arteta ever step away. How do we line up? I've been thinking about this all morning. It's a really, really tough one, isn't it? Because we have to win in Paris. We've set ourselves up to be in a position where our season, or the success of our season, will be judged on that game. We have to win by 2 clear goals, or take them to penalties. So that will be a really, really interesting dynamic for that Paris game. We need people fresh for that. We absolutely need people fresh for it. We also don't have many choices, right? I mean, one thing that I think we keep forgetting is that we're still in a massive injury crisis. It's actually quite insane. We're still getting a lot of criticism, I think, from fans of other clubs, from the press, all of that, about maybe how we played against PSG or how our Premier League form is going, and rightly so. I don't think we were perfect against PSG. I think we're better than a lot of people have given us credit for, but that's a different point. Our Premier League form has been terrible, for want of a better word, but there's a lot of context to that with how we've rotated for the Champions League. But we still have, I would argue, 6 really important senior players out. 2 of them are strikers. So obviously Gabriel Jesus, Kai Havertz, both out. I think the PSG game goes so differently if we have Kai Havertz in the team, by the way. So differently. So that's a real shame. We're missing Ricardo Calafiori, Takahiro Tomiyasu and Gabriel from the back line. Again, could they manage that press a little bit better? I'm sure they would have helped. And Jorginho as well. He's obviously missing. Perhaps not as significant as the other 5 because we have Thomas Partey, Declan Rice. We have a really good midfield. But he is still a coaching figure within the team, and him not being on the sidelines or able to train and stuff like that will be having a negative effect. So we're still in the midst of this injury crisis. We don't have many options for how we line up, and Mikel Arteta has to, I think, manage the legs for Paris on Wednesday. Absolutely has to do that, and that will be really, really important that he does do that. I think it's really important for 1 or 2 players in particular. But he has to get a win. Look at those fixtures. Look at where the other teams are. We have to win this game against Bournemouth. If we win the game against Bournemouth, I think we go into the Liverpool and Newcastle games and we have a lot of the pressure's removed a little bit. It's not removed entirely, but if we went in without maximum points against Bournemouth, we would be looking at those 2 games and thinking, whoa, that's not good. We have to win one of those. And that's a tough proposition against those 2 sides. It's a really tough proposition. So, look, for me, you have to go strong. Strong-ish. Not the strongest, but strong-ish. Here's how I would line up. So I'd go David Raya in goal. That's a pretty obvious one. And I would put Ben White at right back. Now, that's not because I'm looking at Yuri and Timber going, I think he needs a rest. Like, he's desperate for it. But I think actually, in that position, we have 2 players who are semi-fit. Well, Ben White's semi-fit. Yuri and Timber is fit. And actually, both of them are of a starting quality. And it's one of the few positions in the squad where we have players that are both of starting quality. You could say left wing is probably one, but obviously Trossard is playing up front at the moment. You can say right back, and I think you can say left back, but Calafiori's injured as well. Otherwise, I don't think we have that many backups that are really, really high quality. So we need to manage minutes. So yeah, I'd go Ben White at right back, simply because I just think he's a really good player still. Saliba and Kivior, like I say, I don't think we've got a choice. At centre back, I really don't. I'd love to put William Saliba down and rest him, but who do you bring in? I'd love to have the luxury of another player in that spot, but we don't have that option. And then at left back, this is one that I've found really tough, because Miles Lewis-Skelly has not played this whole season, and I think he is probably someone who I'd like to keep in the team, but I'm going to, just because of the importance of the Paris game and the fact that Alexander Zinchenko is a seasoned professional and international captain, I'm going to say let's put him in. And I feel risky saying that because Bournemouth have some fantastic forward players. Semenyo can go out there, Kluivert can go out there, they can really get in and around it. Evan Nielsen could drift over to that side from a central berth as well. So you've got to be really careful putting in your slightly weaker defensive player. But I think we will have a lot of the ball, no matter how we line up. So I would put Zinchenko in there and give Timber and Miles Lewis-Skelly that time off. I think to give them as much chance against Doué and Kvaratskhelia on Wednesday, we need to rest them up. So that's how I'd go in there. Midfield's another tricky one, right? Thomas Partey is obviously available for this game. He wasn't available to play in the first leg against PSG, and that hurt us big time. So we're going to want to play him against Paris. You've got a real balance now because he's had a bit of time off thanks to his suspension. So can you bring him back in, knowing that he's got to play on Wednesday? Well, I think you can. I think Thomas Partey has to go at the base of that midfield. It's a must. Okay? And then in the 2-8s, I think, again, I keep saying this about all the decisions. These are really tough decisions. I think for Martin Odegaard, he must rest. I don't want him to see this pitch at all. To do 0 minutes. Give Ethan Nwaneri 90 minutes. That would be my preference in that right 8 spot. And you know what? I will accept any downturn in the kind of pressing and the organisation and all of that comes with playing an 18-year-old in there. That's not a slight on Ethan Nwaneri. He's just not going to be as good at that part of the game as Martin Odegaard is. That's fine. He's 18. But what we do need is a Martin Odegaard who's got more legs in him, right? He needs a rest. He looks like he is desperate for the summer. Maybe a clean-up surgery. Maybe, maybe he's carrying an injury. Just give the poor man a break before the biggest game of our lives. Well, not the biggest game of our lives. I'm too old to say that. But, one of the biggest games recently against Paris Saint-Germain on Wednesday. So put Martin Odegaard down. And then you've got a big decision in left back. Mikel Merino or Declan Rice. Now, if you play Declan Rice, you can push Mikel Merino forward. But I think there's 2 arguments to this. One, we're going to need Declan Rice to be really, really fit for the PSG game. So do we want to rest him? But also then, is that too much? Taking out Jurriën Timber, Martin Odegaard, Miles Lewis-Skelly and Declan Rice. So I would start both of them. And I would start Declan Rice in left 8 and I'd start Mikel Merino up front. But I'd be looking to get them both off around 60 minutes. How you achieve that, I'm not 100% certain. I think you'd have to get a bit creative and move some people about. And then going forward, I think it is a case, guys, of we need to play Raheem Sterling again. We played him in the first leg to try and get him into some form. This time I think it is to soak up some minutes. You play Raheem Sterling down the right, Mikel Merino up top, and Gabriel Martinelli off the left. So you have Trossard to bring on in any of those positions, really. Not right wing. I think you have to give Sterling a full 90 and try and rest or use his legs as much as possible. So you have Trossard to bring on, and you can shuffle Merino around. So you could bring Trossard on for Rice and shuffle Merino backwards, something like that. So that's how I'd go. I'd go Raya, Ben White, Saliba, Kiwior, Alexander Zinchenko, Partey, Nwaneri, Rice, Sterling, Merino, Trossard. And I would look to get this game won as early as possible. As early as possible. Launch some balls into Mikel Merino, get some early goals, and go from there. I think, for Bournemouth, they have got a fantastic press, just like PSG. Probably not quite as good, of course. PSG were brilliant. But we want to be able to have that option to go over them. And I just don't think Trossard gives us that. I said that in the PSG preview podcast. I wouldn't have played Trossard up front for that game. And I appreciate that with hindsight, it's very easy for me to say, oh, I was right. And I'm sure there was a plan for playing Trossard up front. It just didn't work, even though he tried his hardest and did compete pretty well. So I think you have to play someone who is big up front in this system, because when you're trying to keep as controlled a game as Mikel Arteta does, you also need to have that option to go over a press, because that is one way to control a game, I think. You can't just be stubborn and play the short passes. Trossard up front just doesn't give you that. So you think you have to play Mikel Merino up front. You could maybe put Trossard on the left, but I don't like the idea of resting both Saka and Martinelli. And out of those two, I would pick to rest Saka. So yeah, it's a really interesting lineup. I'd give Jurriën Timber a rest. I'd give Miles Lewis-Skelly a rest. I'd probably get them on for 30 minutes at the end of the game. If we're, in any scenario, if we're winning or losing or drawing, you bring them on, because they are useful and a threat. I think you leave Martin Odegaard on the bench as much as possible, but you do some shuffling to try and get Declan Rice off. And you probably get Saka on at some point as well, but not for Sterling. I'd keep Sterling on for the 90 and try and make him get us through. It's a massive game, but I think that's the rotation that you have to do. Do I think Mikel Arteta will do that much rotation? I'm going to say no. I think he will keep one more senior player in than what I've said. I think it will probably be... If I had to pick one player to go into that team that I've taken out, it would be Bukayo Saka. Simply because I think he's got less mental load than the others because he's been out for so long. Ideally, you'd hope some of those other tissues that he didn't injure, that aren't his hamstring, aren't as, let's say, fatigued. So he's got a bit more in the tank, noting that, he's still trying to get sharp. So, yeah, I think there's an argument that you don't play Raheem Sterling and you play Bukayo Saka. And you get Sterling on at 60, 65 minutes for Saka. In fact, I think I might be talking myself into this. But I think for the others, I think you have to rotate them. The fullbacks need rest so they can go up against Doué and Kvaratskhelia. Odegaard, sit him down. Dear God, please sit him down. That's the number one. Play a full-strength team for all I care. But take Martin Odegaard out of it. And just put Nwaneri in. That's another option that I wouldn't even be mad with. But like I say, I would go with the lineup I described first. Let's do a score prediction then. Oh, I don't know. This is really hard for me because I have been so positive over recent weeks, or I've felt so positive, but I think Bournemouth are going to be right up for this game. Right up for it. And they're not in the best form in the world. I'll say that for sure. They've had a lot of draws recently. They lost a little while ago against Ipswich at home, which is a terrible result for them in their European push. But neither are we, right? So we need to bear that in mind. I think we've got enough. I think we've got enough to beat them. But it is really tough to predict anything other than a draw at the moment with the amount of draws we've had. So, look, I think to win it, we have to go out and get early goals and get this game wrapped up. I'm going to be positive. I'm going to go out there and say 2-1. I think we just nick it. Maybe we go to 1-1 sort of at half-time, and then we just edge the second half. But don't be surprised if this is another draw and we are staring down the barrel of a very difficult pair of Premier League games between Arsenal and Liverpool and Arsenal and Newcastle. Okay, guys, I'm going to leave it there for this preview podcast. Like I say, it's on a knife edge, isn't it? Hangs in the balance. And we really, really could do with just getting 3 points and getting out of there this weekend. If you're around, go and look at the ticket exchange. There are tickets there available, and you might be able to snag a ticket to what hopefully is a good game and an interesting watch. I haven't said it in the middle, but if you enjoyed this episode or any episode of Arsenal Unfiltered, please do leave a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, wherever you listen. It helps so much for other people to find the podcast and for this podcast to grow and reach more people. So I really, really appreciate if you can go and leave a 5-star review wherever you get your podcasts at. It's so, so helpful. All that's left to say is thank you so much for following. Thank you for listening, and I will speak to you very, very soon.